Spectrovision Radio. Spectrovision Radio.
Hello and welcome to the Modern Fairy Sightings Podcast, where we listen to people's fairy encounters. But take heed, we're not talking about winged Tinkerbells here. These are real fairies, real encounters that took people like you and I by surprise. Stay a while and hear their stories. My name is Jo Hickey Hall, and I'm a folklore researcher. After going through all this, I started to be able to go for little walks again. And I stayed quite close to home, and we'd since moved, and we live quite close to a canal and a river that run next to each other. And I thought, oh, that would be really nice. I'll walk down there. And I almost felt like what happened was I felt like I was being rewarded for my hard work in a way, because I had been through all those dark times, and I had completely let go of all the facades, and I was beginning to, take those first steps as that me again, and literally first steps as well. And I took the dogs down to the path between the canal and the river, and it literally is just a meter path. The water's either side. And then I was sort of, because hadn't moved here very long, I was sort of adventuring a bit on a wander, and I went over onto what looked like a little river island, like a tributary. You could sort of go off, and the river sort of went all the way around it, and it almost made like a little island, because the canal cut off the other bit. So all there was the path. And I thought, oh, I'll go and have a look around there. And there was a little tiny bridge over the river on the other side, and it went up into a copse. And I thought, oh, I'll go and have a look up there, like I would. Yeah. I'll go and have a look. And as soon as I walked over the bridge and into the woods, all my spidey senses went off, and I was like, I shouldn't be here. It was like all the sound had stopped. It was like, sorry, that's my dogs. All the sound had stopped from outside. You couldn't hear the birds. It was quite a windy day. The trees weren't whooshing. It just stopped. And I felt like there were 1,000 eyes on me. And there was nowhere to be seen. It was just trees. And it was almost like, you'd walked into a party and everyone had stopped and turned around to look at you, And I just turned around, and I said to my dogs, because I talk out loud to my dogs, as you do, I said, we shouldn't be here. And I turned round and I just went straight back over the bridge and away and back. And as soon as I went onto the island, the trees were moving again. It was all back to normal. And I thought that was very strange. But I had a deep knowing that it was the Fae, a deep, deep knowing. I thought that's Fae territory. I shouldn't be there. They don't want me there. So I'm going to leave. So I walked in, went, oh no, shouldn't be here. They don't want me here. Turned around, went out again. And as I was walking away back towards the river path on the island, it was like all around me, because you couldn't tell what direction it was coming from, was this beautiful music. And there aren't really words to describe it in human, but it sounded like a mix between a wooden Irish whistle, which is, more of a little pipe. They call it a whistle, but it's made of wood. It's got a very particular sound, and sort of pan pipes. So it sounded like an Irish whistle, but it had that more breathiness, more dispersed
Yeah.
sound like a panpipe. And it was sort of the sort of music you would hear from an Irish whistle, but it was, whilst familiar at the same time, no song I'd ever heard. And it was coming from everywhere. You know, normally if someone's playing some music or there's a sound coming, you're out about, you can discern what direction that music is coming from. It was all around me, everywhere. And I I sort of stopped, and for a millisecond my brain went, oh, there must be someone playing a whistle in the woods, and I turned back towards the woods to try and pinpoint where the sound was coming from. And it immediately went from all around me to the woods and then came all around me again. So it was almost as if, and it didn't matter where I went and what direction I turned in and which way the wind was blowing. It was like I was in a bubble of this music. And it was the most beautiful music I've ever heard in my life. And I can't, we don't have words to adequately describe how this music sounds. You can sort of vaguely say, well, there's this sort of, but it's just magical. And I just knew that it was fairy music. And whether they were saying thank you for understanding our respecting our wishes, or whether they could see more, could see me and see what I'd been through and who my guides were, and so I could understand their wishes and were saying, well done. have a little prize. It felt very like it felt like a gift. And it was just I stood there. I had a sense that it was never going to happen again. That this was a moment in my life that was never ever going to be repeated. And so I just stood there for as long as I possibly could, just appreciating it and feeling it, because it had such a lightness to it. It was like the air around you became lighter and brighter, and it was like someone was lifting all the stress off you. Even though I didn't feel particularly stressed, it was almost like I became lighter. And yeah, it was just a incredible experience. And I have no doubt in my mind that it was fairy music.
Did the dogs react at all? Do you think they could hear it too? Just wondering.
What's strange is my dogs are quite impatient. So if I stop for any reason, for any length of time, they usually start sort of giving me the odd bark. But they didn't. They were just absolutely silent. And they just stood and they were just looking. I mean, maybe they could see something that I couldn't see, but they were just looking all around. It's like they were turning and looking. I don't know whether they could hear it and they too were trying to work out where the sound was coming from, because it was all at once all around me, like it was surrounding me, but also everywhere else as well. It was like it's really difficult to describe, like it was everywhere, all around. And they were sort of doing the same thing. They were like turning all around, just looking, almost whether they could see something around us that I couldn't see, or whether they were just, again, just trying to work out where the sound was coming from. But they stood quite close to me. They both stayed by me. Whether there was a sense of they weren't sure and they wanted to, that's the sort of thing they would do if they wanted to protect me. So perhaps they weren't sure what was happening either. But they went very quiet and very passive. There was no, they didn't get upset or dysregulated in any way, and they didn't bark because I must have stood there for ages, just soaking it all in, just really appreciating the gift I was being given. And then all of a sudden it just stopped. It was just like, and the world came all back in. And I sort of turned to them and said, right then, let's go home. And that was, like it was the most normal thing in the world. But I was so incredibly grateful right into my soul for what I had been allowed to experience. And that night, I like to sit and watch the sun go down out of my bedroom window because you can see out all across the fields. And I was just sitting, looking out, watching the sun go down, thinking, that was amazing. I'm so lucky. I don't think that's ever going to happen to me again in my whole life. And outside of my window in the field was the biggest hare I have ever seen in my life. Now, I live in the countryside. I've seen big hares. They can get surprisingly large. This large. This was bigger than a Labrador. It was the size of a human, and it was definitely a hare because it was probably only about 5 or 6 meters from my window. I could see the little black markings on it that made it was definitely a hare, not a rabbit. It walked like a hare with that funny sort of lopsided gait at the back instead of the hop. And it was staring at me.
Gosh.
Absolutely stock still, just staring at me
Yeah.
in the window. And it was enormous. It was bigger than, a European giant rabbit or anything like it. It was the size of a human. It was the biggest hare. I don't, it can't possibly have been a hare. And what came into my mind was that piece of Tamsin Abbott's glass work where that she did to celebrate the life of Isobel Gowdie,
Gowdie, yeah.
and I shall go into a hare.
Yes.
I thought, and I just looked out the window. You, isn't it? Because I felt like they'd followed me home, and that it was almost the way it looked at me. Because normally you see hares in the field and they don't even notice you. They're minding their own business and they're hopping around and they're, eating grass and occasionally sit up and have a little look, or they play. This was a hare completely on its own. It was the size of a human being. And it was just staring at me in my window. And it felt very much like it was trying to get the measure of me. I felt like it was sort of sizing me up, like trying to I'd piqued its interest, and it was like, who are you? And it was really, I felt like it was assessing me. And again, I just sat, just looking at it, making eye contact with it, thinking, my goodness me, what an extraordinary day that I've been blessed with. And it felt like a blessing, that I'd been gifted that music, and then it's almost like they'd followed me home and were sizing me up to find out. And it's interesting because, right at the beginning we talked about that sense of enchantment, of how, you almost don't react. In the hours and days following seeing the hare out of the window, I felt this almost irresistible urge to go back to that island by the woods, like absolute draw.
Yeah.
And it was at the level where it felt enchanted, that I was being drawn back to the place again. And I didn't go because I was aware that it felt like an enchantment. I thought, no, because it's not my choice to do so, and I'm not going to. And it was so incredibly difficult to resist it. I mean, it filled this sensation of drawing you back there, filled every atom of your body at all times. It ate away at you. But thankfully, I'm quite stubborn. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do something that I'm not fully in control of, and that I don't, it, I didn't know, it wasn't an area I knew because it was a new area. I knew the woods where I'd walked and I'd had things happen before. I knew that they felt okay. I hadn't had that with this. And it felt quite hostile when I'd gone into those woods. There was a very sense that I wasn't supposed to be there. And although I'd been gifted the music, the Hare had come and made eye contact, and then I had this overwhelming sense of enchantment. I was very aware that perhaps it wouldn't be a good idea to follow that instinct, because it wasn't my own instinct, and I didn't know what was going to happen, and I didn't know the area. So I didn't go, and I haven't been back.
Wise.
I'm always like, if I go back, what will happen?
No, that's goodness me. Do you know, it's so bizarre because just this morning when I was sort of doing the school run, and as I said, I had to go and sort some things out before we spoke. And I was listening to Isobel Gowdie's words this morning.
Oh, were you?
Yes, because I was listening to the Boggart and Banshee latest episode about rabbits and hares.
Oh.
And the funny thing is that on the way, so I had just heard her words because Chris Woodyard read the words. I shall go, and I shall go into a hare. She read the paragraph out. And as I got to the bottom, and I just crossed a bridge onto, there's a local river here. It's tiny now, but it's somewhere that I walk along. Anyway, so I just had crossed the bridge and I'm nearing home, and I saw an egret that returns every year. And it was just, I mean, it was quite ghostly, actually. It was so beautiful. And I live on the edge of a city. So I'm on the edge of Bristol. So we do get a lot of wildlife in our garden. But there is right next to an industrial unit. It is
Not where egrets normally are.
no, but this one returns every year. And funny enough, the last year that last time I saw it was last year. And at that point, I was listening to, I actually told my Discord group straight away, because last year I sent a photo and said, I've just seen the egret. And I was listening to something really pivotal at the time about things that appear that are white. And I had a synchronicity happen at that time when I saw it. And so now I've just seen it again this morning when I'm listening to, about white hair, magical white hares. The magical white egret returns, and now I'm talking to you, and you're talking about the same, and obviously talking about Isobel Gowdie. Amazing.
Shall I tell you something funny?
Yeah.
My dad always tells this story. The day I was born, my dad went down into the kitchen very early in the morning, and obviously my mum had only just gone into labour with me, and he walked into the kitchen, and a white hare went straight through the wall, bounced off the floor, and went out the other thing. And I was born a couple of hours later. And he always tells the story that the white hare foretold my birth. And so it's very interesting how, I've come full cycle in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
in more ways than one.
And, listening to the white hair on the way, just before our conversation. And so before you arrived is what I'm trying to get at here.
Yeah.
Before you arrived, there's this visitation from the egret too. How amazing. Well, I think your story is a very inspirational one because many of us are kind of sleepwalking through life, just as you're trying to, just trying to get to the next week, the next month, tied up and tied down with the stresses of life to a point where we do forget who we are, and we hardly stop to notice what takes place around us. Just really led back to you sitting in your room, watching the sun go down, another threshold, looking, through the glass, which again, through the window where we perceive, through these thresholds. This often we're rushing around that we don't actually take the time to watch the sun go down, or to, maybe we'll go a bit further over that bridge and into the copse where something can happen. It's part of who we are as human beings, and yet we've just completely lost that side of ourselves for the most part. But in those opportunities, in those spaces, like we had, as you say, in lockdown, and a lot of us started to realize, remember, recover the meaningfulness that we had cast aside in pursuit of, being on the hamster wheel. Something's growing in us again. And it's just absolutely inspirational to hear how that's happened for you, and that you're a very different person sitting here today telling this story. And I wanted to ask, what are you doing now? Are you doing something with, where you've come to in your life? It feels like you've come here to do something. And I wonder if you have
Yes.
figured that out
Yeah.
yet.
So I've not 100% figured it out yet, but um, it's led me to sort of counsel people through their own Kundalini awakenings, because again, it can be quite a messy process, and it's quite fashionable to kind of awaken them on retreats and things now, and then just go home, and that's not how it works. You can't put it back in the box. I read tarot. I can now channel. I actually now channel Arthur Mac Aiden from Dalwriter, and he gives me messages, and which I put on Substack. And I also make jewelry, which I imbue with sort of, spell work's the wrong word, but imbue with sort of certain strengths and things to help people in their lives. But yes, I have this strong sense that there's something important that's going to happen. It's all leading me to a point, and these are all, and I read tarot as well, but I think these are all sort of skills I'm building up, and they're all going to lead somewhere, but I'm not entirely sure where quite yet.
Yeah.
But like you say, I just keep going off the beaten path and keep wandering, and synchronicities happen, and I meet people, and these things happen.
This is it. And this
Something will
is,
come up.
yeah, and you can trust in that. And this is, I'm sure you've heard me talk about this time and time again, is that you get these little breadcrumbs and you have a sense which way to go, the people that you meet, as you say, opportunities arise. And it's not a pushing. We're so used to sort of grasping and pushing in this material realm. And this is what we've been brought up to do. Oh, you want to get there? Oh, you need to do this, 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 and that first. Oh, you've done that. Oh, there's no way you'll get there. And that's just rubbish. It's absolute nonsense. It's hard to try and get that across to people sometimes and it's particularly difficult for young people actually, because, like us, they've all been taught that you need to go a certain way, but this is how it happens. You are led. This is the way that we actually are meant to live, like the animals. They don't get up and, check their calendars in the morning and decide what they're going to do that day.
Yeah.
Things, as I say, going back to the beginning, kind of unfurl in their own way. And this is what we've got to learn to kind of tap back into again in our own lives and really trust it. And don't take any notice of, I don't know, people in our lives that say, oh, well, you can't do that. And, find the people that will encourage you in that. And that you feel you're able to be yourself around and in that transformation too. Because they will be there, and there might be people that are kind of in your periphery of people that you haven't quite got to spend a lot of time with yet, but they will be in your lives. I tend to find that. So it's really, it's been really wonderful to hear your journey with all of this. And I'm very interested in the channeling that you spoke about. Is the Substack something that you like to share with people? I mean, obviously you
Yeah,
are, but
so
not as
I've only
you.
just started it actually.
Okay.
But on Substack, I'm Ishka Pendragon. Ishka spelled in the Irish way, Uisce. It's the name Gwyn calls me by. Um, and yes, Ishka Pendragon. And yeah, whenever I get anything from Arthur MacAden, he's usually talking about the times we're in and what's going on. And I just post his messages up there. He interrupts me all sorts of times. He doesn't, I don't sit down and go, oh, I'm going to channel Arthur now. He just comes in. I can be driving the car, I can be doing anything. And he's very polite. He says, Arthur wishes to speak. And then I have to very quickly find a pen and just start writing, and he will just tell me what he wants to say. And sometimes they're just messages for me, but sometimes they are almost like proclamations. And I'll put those up on Substack. Um, and I've got a very interesting message or anecdote for you from Gwyn ap Nuith actually, because I asked him about the Jessica Mitchell Dark Man sighting, because I was a bit annoyed with him for scaring women. And I said, was it you? Because I was a bit outraged. And in typical Gwyn fashion, he answered in one sentence that said everything. He said, I said, was the dark man on the tour you? And that Jessica Mitchell saw. He said, yes, it was me. But sometimes it's Gwion, which I thought was fascinating because
Oh.
Gwion, of course, is Taliesin.
Oh.
Gwion is the boy that was stirring the cauldron and of Ceridwen's cauldron, and the splotch of medicine or potion went on him, and she chased him because he'd spoiled her potion. Because I've since learnt all this through my process of knowing Gwyn. He's taught me all these things, and obviously Ceridwen then consumed him, transmuted and birthed him as Taliesin. And Taliesin was the bard to Urian of Rhaeged. So we come full circle that the dark man of the tour is not always Gwyn ap Nuith. Gwyn ap Nuith tells me it is sometimes Gwion.
That is so intriguing, isn't it? It's really, really interesting.
And
Our
this is the
paths.
thing, you can corroborate it all. You're told these things, and then you can corroborate it all through other people's experiences and also through folklore that you didn't necessarily know before it
Yeah.
started. But yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. But he's very keen to sort of say that he's a protector of Britain. He's this bull of Britain, and not to be scared of him because he's looking out for everyone, particularly the sort of ancestors of the Old North, the descendants of the Old North. But also, there is that sense, almost that Arthurian. It's interesting that it's the same time, but all this Arthurian sense that, when Britain needs him, he's there, sort of thing. There's very much that
Yeah.
vibe with Gwyn.
They are always there at the juncture. They're there at the thresholds, and that's what we're going through right now. And yeah, so your story is part of that, and I know that people that will be listening to this will be inspired to to go with their own tuition on things too, and to step out. So I salute you for for going with it. And how long ago did you see the Hare? I'm just wondering of sort of the time frame of that.
Oh, it was earlier this year.
Mm.
When would it have been? Um, it may well have been May, actually.
Mm.
It may well have been.
Mm. So
Anthony.
you're not planning on going back to that copse?
Um, it doesn't feel right at this time. Um, I've got I I've got a feeling that I probably will, but I think it's got to feel like the right time, almost like an invitation. I want to go when it feels like the right thing to do, but I'm not being enticed to do so. And equally, I'm not doing so for my own sort of like morbid curiosity, because also there's a, if you try and instigate things, um you know, that you can sort of incur their wrath a little bit.
Mm.
It's not really something to you know to be meddling in. I
No.
get the feeling, certainly for them, I mean, there's other places where I know, these woods where I know there's fae, but I also know I'm welcome. And whilst I always say, can I come in? I know that they're going to say yes, it's fine. But there I get a very different feeling, and so I'm much more wary about returning there uninvited. Um, it almost feels a little bit dangerous is the wrong word, but a little bit wild,
Mm.
um, almost like they're not used to the the interaction so much, still feels a bit
Yeah.
wild, and
Yeah.
unpredictable. So, but I get the feeling I will be going back, but I think it would have to be when it feels like the right time.
Hmm. Mm. Did did you speak to Gwyn about what had happened with the music and the cops? Wondering what the
Um,
would be.
I didn't actually. No, I didn't. I haven't done. Because actually now I've gone through the process and I'm kind of on dry land the other side. He comes much less because, and like Mary Poppins,
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
want him, he can't stay, and if you need him, he's there. So I think now is kind of, I don't need him. He's quite hands off. He does still come in, and if I explicitly ask him something, he will answer. Like this morning when I was saying, is it definitely Gwion? You said Gwion, not Gwydion. Definitely Gwion, not Gwydion. Yes, definitely Gwion. So because I wanted to get it right, I said, I don't want to sort of tell someone an anecdote that you've said about something interesting and do it wrong. But he's much more distant now. Whether that will stay the same, there's definitely a sense that he came in for a purpose and that he held my hand through that process.
Mm.
And now I don't need him so much because I've kind of got it, I've understood, and I can do it myself. He's sort of backing away a bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And certainly in the past, there was things he wanted me to do for him and things. Um, he wanted me to go to Sutton Hoo and talk to Radwald in Saxon. He wanted me. He said, you have to go and you have to tell him that he's got to move on. He needs to leave. It's time to go. He needs to come with me. And so I had to sort of research and find out, like, write a passage in a way that I would understand, and like literally go there and read it out, and read it round. And he asked me to do that for him. And then I had to check with Gwyn. I was like, well, has he gone with you? I don't know. Are you taking him? It was almost like he had stayed in the place and he was like, he needs to leave. And he said, yeah, I've got him. He's coming with me. And I was driving home from there, and I was only about 2 minutes away from Sutton Hoo, and there's a forest there where actually there's been a UFO sighting, a very thick pine forest.
Rendlesham
Yeah, that's
Forest.
it. And I was driving through Rendlesham Forest because where I was staying, this was another, mum's covert holidays.
Yeah.
When I go and do secret missions. And I was driving through Rendlesham Forest on the way back, and it's a 60-mile-an-hour road. And out of my peripheral vision, I saw a huge set of antlers. And I stopped the car. I was like, there's a big set of antlers right by the road. And I went into the woods where I had seen them, and they were 200 meters in the woods, in the deep fine forest. There is no way I could have seen them
with your eyes.
No. And that was my thank you gift from Gwyn.
Goodness.
And it was the biggest fallow deer antlers. Like, this deer must have been so old when it died. It still had its skull on, so it must have died of natural causes as well, which is rare, and for it not to have been taken if it had been hunted. This stag had lived a life and was magnificent. I'll get them for you if you like, and I'll show you them.
I'd love to see them.
Okay, yeah. Bear with me. I'll be one.
Will we get two enormous dogs come bouldering in
only if you want to. If you like Bernie's Mountain.
The whole effect. Give us the whole effect.
It would be chaos. No, it would be chaos. It would be chaos.
Oh. Hello. That was a lovely big handsome tail.
Here we go. Right. These.
Oh, look at
this. So these no longer have a face because it still had a bit of brain, and we were on holiday with kids, so we were like, let's just not. But yeah, so these. So I had just done what Gwyn had sent me to do for him, to move Radwold on.
Yeah.
And I saw these from 200 meters in a pine forest. There's no way I saw these with my eyes. And this is a seriously old.
Yeah.
Deer.
Oh, it's absolutely beautiful. Absolutely.
And now this has pride of place on my sort of altar table. And yeah, I think, there's tests, isn't there, that you go through, and then there's things also that you do that, you get a thank you for. And I think this was definitely my thank you for doing what he'd asked me to do that day. And they're very beautiful, and I love them. And I often just talk to Gwyn, through them effectively. And actually, what's very interesting is where, I often regret breaking the skull off, but these holes here, when I went to the Bronze Age exhibition at the British Museum, which had obviously artifacts from all across the world at the same period of time in the Bronze Age, they had one of the star car headdresses there, which looks like this. God. And that it was full of beautiful. They had the mold cape out. They had all these beautiful Bronze Age, amazing things, Corinthian armor that was in perfect condition, the silver hand that was like Lou of the Silver Hand that they dug up somewhere, all these amazing legendary things that I was seeing in real time. And the thing that stopped me in my tracks, this thing was the star car headdress. The energy in the star car headdress, or one of them, is just extraordinary. It was like, you know, that bit in Raiders of the Lost Ark where they lock it in a box and it's still going.
Yeah.
That's what that star car headdress was like.
Yeah.
And it literally, I couldn't move. I stood in front of it and I couldn't move. And I almost was like having sort of like almost like past life sort of flashbacks in front of it. And Gwyn was there so strongly. And, so to then receive this and then have to bash off the top to get the muck out so that the kids weren't having to sit with the smell in the car. And it turned into effectively a star car headdress.
Incredible.
Just, but like you say, the synchronicities, are point you in the right direction, don't they? That, all these things, your path is illuminated for you,
For sure. That's it. It's
where, where it leads.
yeah.
Nobody knows.
Thanks so much for sharing, for showing us that. We went there oh God, was it last year or this year? It was last year. We have like a Patreon in-person meetup, and one of our members was he lives down there and he's in there all the time in Rendlesham Forest. So we went to Rendlesham Forest in the morning for a walk, and then we went to Sutton Hoo. And there's parts of that forest where, oh my goodness, you just walked into a different space, basically. We had something happen because obviously quite a lot of us are very sensitive and most of us have had experiences. So there's all sorts going on and all sorts of really interesting discussions. But wow, what a pokey place to be. And I didn't know too much about the history actually with Sutton Hoo, so I wasn't familiar with the history specific to that at the time. But it sounds like you have really got in touch with these places, really, trusted the trip and, gone into the research and been able to come back and show it. So, well rewarded there.
Yeah, it was an instant reward. I mean, I was like, a mile down the road or something, and it materialized immediately. But then, but I think before you get to that point, obviously there's tests to see what you're made of. I had two particularly that were really testing my mettle to see, if I was brave. And I guess if someone says, "Are you brave?" you probably go, "Oh, I don't know," And then you're put in situations that you have no time to think, and you either are or you aren't. And Gwyn put me through two of those. Once I was driving back from the wood, and a little child and a little dog just ran out in front of the car. They'd escaped from a house, and what do you do? What are you made of? And I had to just stop the car in the middle of the road, stop the traffic, pick up the child, and I was literally standing in the middle of a national speed limit road, making myself, trying to make my car and everything and myself as obvious as I was while I rescued this toddler who had escaped from somewhere and this dog that was running around in the road. And I just did it without even thinking. My automatic response was stop, get out, get them. And the second time, and he had said, "You're going to be tested." And I didn't realize, and it was, I had to, I put my life on the line, really. I could have been hit by a car. It was over there was just in front of me was a brow of a hill. You wouldn't have seen until you got over going full speed, So, but I didn't think of that. I just thought I need to get this child and this dog right now. And the second time was when I was driving back from Oxford, actually, to South Oxfordshire where we lived, and it was the night, and it was a horrible night, and it was pouring with rain, it was pitch black, and it was in the middle of the winter, and a few cars in front hit a stag, and it was a young stag, and it was in the road, and it was trying to get up on its back legs, and it was collapsing down again, and people were just driving past, and I was like, this is just going to get hit again and again and again. So I even had my kids in the car, but I didn't even, and so I just stopped the car, put the hazards on in the middle of the road, again, a national speed limit road, said to the kids, don't move, lock them in. And I just went, and I helped the stag up, and I got it to the side of the road, and it was clear then, I could feel from its abdomen that it had internal bleeding. And I sat with it, and a policeman stopped, and a guy, because when you live in the countryside, everyone's going about with guns or whatever, farmers and people going shooting and things. So a guy stopped, and he was saying, let me drag it into the field and shoot it in the head. And I looked at this little stag, and he must have only been a couple of years old, and he was so frightened. And I just said, no. And I had to really argue with them. I had to really say, no, back off. And so the policeman just went and sat in the car, made sure my car was all right. This guy was just standing there, looking at me like, stupid woman. And I just covered over the stag's eyes so that it wasn't panicked. And I just stroked it and talked to it until it died.
Oh, nice.
And when I was driving home, Gwyn said to me, I'm going to always protect your sons because you protected mine. You looked after mine. And so I knew then that it had been a test of, what was I made of? I think they need to know that they need to see what your soul, the core of your soul is at heart, in order to see whether you're worthy of their time and of working with you. And and so that was quite early on that I was, had these tests happen, just to see, I think, what decisions I would make in a split second. And obviously I made the right ones.
Oh, goodness. Yeah. Absolutely wonderful to hear this. And thank you so much for sharing. It's been very helpful for me to hear all of this morning. So I know how much it will help other people here too. And it's very timely, I feel. We need to be being a different way, and this is the way that life is meant to be. I feel it feels like you're really on track with what you're doing too. And yeah, thanks again. And I'd love to subscribe to your Substack, so I will put that in the comments below so that people can do that. And I don't know, maybe we can arrange for you to come talk more about the channeling too, because I'd like to hear, if there's more messages for us in that regard, through that medium. So I hope wishing you well for the season too.
Yes, have a lovely Yule.
Yeah, you too. And it'd be fab to speak again and hear how your journey develops further too. So yeah, thanks so much for your time. It's been really wonderful to meet you. I'm glad that we were able to do this today.
Thank you. It's been lovely meeting you.
Thanks so much for listening and watching. If you enjoyed the podcast, please consider joining us on Patreon for dozens more episodes of unreleased bonus content, monthly online events, and a private chat. We are a warm, supportive community, and it really helps to support the project. Find us on patreon.com/the Modern Fairy Sightings Podcast.
Spectrovision Radio.